And you were the oldest brother.
Yes,
So it's
I was
just,
the eldest brother.
it seems, doesn't it? It seems strange that,
It is
that
strange.
your mum and you
Yes.
have outsurvived the three younger ones.
And my older sister, Lynn.
For many years, people around the world knew Barry Gibb as a powerful voice behind the Bee Gees, a band that helped shape modern pop music. With his brothers Robin Gibb and Maurice Gibb, he created songs that millions of people still love today. Their music filled dance floors, radios, and movie theaters, especially during the famous Saturday Night Fever era. From the outside, Barry's life looked like a dream. He had fame, success, money, and fans everywhere. But behind the bright lights and loud applause, his life also carried deep pain and personal struggles. Over time, Barry faced a loss that very few people could imagine. One by one, he lost his brothers, the same brothers who had stood beside him since childhood. The music they created together was not just work. It was their shared life and identity. When those voices were suddenly gone, Barry felt like a huge part of his world had disappeared. After losing Andy, Maurice, and later Robin, Barry found himself alone in a way he had never experienced before. The man who once stood confidently on the world's biggest stages now struggled with silence and grief. During this dark time, one person quietly stood beside him and refused to let him fall completely into despair. That person was his wife, Linda Gray Gibb. Their love story, which began decades earlier in a simple and almost magical way, would become one of the strongest foundations of Barry's life. Long before tragedy entered the picture, Barry had first met Linda in 1967 in London, while the Bee Gees were quickly rising to fame. At the time, Linda had just been crowned Miss Edinburgh and was working briefly as a television host. Barry noticed her during a recording of the popular music show Top of the Pops. Something about her immediately caught his attention. Later, Barry would say that he felt an instant connection, the kind of feeling that is difficult to explain, but impossible to ignore. Instead of making a grand romantic gesture, Barry approached her in a simple and shy way. He asked if she would like to have a cup of tea with him. That small moment started a conversation that would change both of their lives forever. As they walked around the television studio, looking for a quiet place to talk, they eventually wandered onto the set of the famous science fiction show Doctor Who. Surrounded by unusual props and the strange-looking Daleks in the show, they shared their first kiss inside the TARDIS set. It was an unusual and funny beginning to a relationship, but it was also the start of a bond that would last more than 50 years. At the time, Barry's life was moving quickly. Fame was growing. Tours were becoming more demanding, and his personal life was complicated. He had already been married once at a very young age, but that relationship ended after only a few years. Life in the music industry was fast, stressful, and sometimes confusing for someone who was still learning who he really was. During that period, Linda slowly became more than just someone he had met at a television studio. She began working as Barry's secretary and spent a lot of time around him during some of the most difficult moments of his early career. Instead of rushing into romance, they built something deeper first: trust, understanding, and friendship. Linda watched Barry experience both excitement and heartbreak as his career grew. She saw the pressure that came with sudden fame and the emotional weight that followed him everywhere. Through all of this, she remained calm, steady, and supportive. By the time Barry's divorce from his first wife was finalized, the bond between him and Linda had already become strong and meaningful. In September 1970, Barry married Linda at Caxton Hall in London. The same day, he turned 24 years old. Some people outside their circle wondered if the marriage happened too quickly, but Barry and Linda knew their connection had been growing quietly for years. Neither of them could predict the incredible journey ahead, filled with worldwide fame, family life, heartbreaking loss, and moments of unexpected joy. What they did know, however, was that they had found someone who truly understood them. That understanding would become the most important support Barry would ever have, especially in the difficult years that would come later. After Barry and Linda were married in 1970, their life together slowly began to grow into something much bigger than either of them had imagined. At the time, Barry was already well known in the music world, but the full power of the Bee Gees' global fame had not yet arrived. The band had success in the late 1960s, but they were still trying to find the sound and direction that would define their legacy. During those early years of marriage, Linda played an important role in helping Barry maintain balance between his growing career and his personal life. While the music industry around them was often filled with chaos, parties, and endless travel, Linda preferred a quieter and more stable way of living. She understood that fame could be exciting, but she also believed that a strong home life was just as important. Because of this, she helped create a sense of normal life for Barry even while his career continued to grow at an incredible pace. In December 1973, Barry and Linda welcomed their first child, a son named Stephen. Becoming a father changed Barry in many ways. Before Stephen was born, Barry's life had mostly revolved around music, tours, and recording sessions. Suddenly, he had someone depending on him in a completely new way. He often said later that becoming a father made him think differently about success. Fame was no longer just about hit songs and sold-out concerts. It also became about building a secure and loving home for his family. Around this time, the Bee Gees were facing challenges in their career. The music industry was changing, and the band's earlier style was no longer as popular as it once had been. Many artists would have struggled during this period, but sometimes difficult moments can lead to important changes. In the mid-1970s, the Gibb brothers decided to move to Miami, Florida, hoping that a fresh environment might inspire new creativity. The move came partly after suggestion from their friend Eric Clapton, who believed that the warm weather and relaxed atmosphere of Miami could help them rediscover their musical energy. Barry and his family settled into a house that had previously belonged to Clapton himself, a place where many famous songs had once been written. For Barry, Miami felt strangely familiar. It reminded him of the sunshine and beaches of Australia, where he had spent much of his childhood before becoming famous. This new environment allowed him to breathe, think clearly, and experiment with new musical ideas. While Barry worked long hours in recording studios, Linda focused on creating a stable home for their growing family. In September 1977, their second son, Ashley, was born. The timing was remarkable because it happened just as the Bee Gees were entering one of the most successful periods in music history. Around the same time, the soundtrack for the film Saturday Night Fever was released. The music, which included songs written and performed by the Bee Gees, quickly became a global sensation. Songs like Stay Alive, Night Fever, and How Deep Is Your Love dominated radio stations everywhere. Almost overnight, Barry and his brothers became some of the most famous musicians in the world. Fame at that level can often change people, and many artists struggle with the pressure that comes with such attention. However, Barry later admitted that coming home to Linda and their children helped keep him grounded during those intense years. While fans saw glamorous concerts and worldwide fame, Barry often preferred quiet evenings at home with his family whenever he had the chance. In interviews, he later explained that those simple moments helped him avoid many of the destructive habits that affected other musicians during the same era. Linda encouraged routines that kept life stable, such as family dinners, private conversations, and time away from the spotlight. As the Bee Gees' success continued through the late 1970s and early 1980s, Barry and Linda welcomed more children into their family. Their third son, Travis, was born in 1981. Later, in 1984, they welcomed another son, Michael. Finally, in 1991, their daughter Alexandra completed the family. Raising 5 children while managing a worldwide music career was not always easy, but Linda handled the responsibility with patience and dedication. Friends of the family often said that the Gibb household felt surprisingly normal despite the incredible fame surrounding them. Music history was being created in recording studios around the world. But inside their home, there were still school schedules, homework, laughter, and the everyday moments that make a family strong. Barry often said that without Linda's calm and steady presence, maintaining that balance would have been almost impossible. As the years passed, Barry and Linda's home in Miami became more than just a place to rest between tours and recording sessions. It slowly grew into the center of a large and loving family. While the Bee Gees continued to create music and perform around the world, Barry also focused on being a present father for his 5 children. Many people assume that the children of famous musicians grow up surrounded only by luxury and fame, but Barry and Linda try to keep their household grounded and simple. Linda especially believed that children should experience a normal childhood as much as possible. She made sure the kids attended school, completed homework, and followed routines like any other family. There were dinners at the table, family conversations, and time spent together away from the public eye. For Barry, these everyday moments became extremely valuable because his career often pulled him into a fast and demanding world filled with constant travel, recording deadlines, and public attention. As their children grew older, each one began developing their own personality and interests. Some of them showed signs of musical talent, which was not surprising considering the incredible musical history of the Gibb family. Barry had grown up creating music with his brothers, and now he began to notice that creativity was also appearing in the next generation. His oldest son, Stephen, developed a strong interest in guitar and rock music. Unlike the smooth pop sound that made the Bee Gees famous, Stephen's musical taste leaned toward heavier rock and metal styles. Over time, he became a skilled guitarist and performed with well-known bands such as Black Label Society, Crowbar, and 58. Even though Stephen's musical style was different from his father's, Barry was proud to see his son following a creative path of his own. Their shared love of music helped strengthen the bond between them. Ashley, Barry and Linda's second son, also showed creative ability, although his path into music happened more slowly. For many years, Ashley simply enjoyed writing songs privately and experimenting with melodies. Barry noticed this quiet talent and encouraged him to continue exploring it. Later, when Barry began working on new music projects, he invited Ashley to join the songwriting process. This collaboration allowed father and son to build a creative partnership that was both personal and professional. Travis, their third son, chose a very different direction in life. Instead of entering the music industry, he built a successful career in real estate. Barry and Linda support his decision because they always believe their children should follow their own interests rather than feeling pressured to continue the family's musical legacy. Their fourth son, Michael, and their youngest child, Alexandra, also grew up surrounded by music, yet they maintain a more private lifestyle compared to some of their siblings. Alexandra occasionally appeared in public with her father and showed support for his career, but she largely stayed out of the spotlight. Over time, Barry and Linda began to see their family expanding even further when their children started having families of their own. Becoming grandparents opened a new chapter in their lives. Barry once said that being a grandfather felt very different from being a parent. When he was raising his own children, his career often kept him busy with tours and recording sessions. As a grandfather, he had the chance to slow down and truly enjoy simple moments with the younger generation. The house that had once been filled with the energy of 5 growing children now welcomed grandchildren who brought new laughter and excitement. Toys appeared in the living room again, and family gatherings became larger and more joyful. Barry often enjoyed spending quiet time watching old cartoons with his grandchildren, sharing stories from his life, and laughing at moments that reminded him of his own childhood. For Linda, seeing the family grow was one of the greatest rewards of the life they had built together. Their relationship had begun decades earlier with a simple conversation and a walk through a television studio. Now it had grown into a large family network filled with children, grandchildren, and shared memories. Yet even as Barry's family life continued to grow stronger, another part of his life was slowly changing in a much more painful way. The brothers who had once stood beside him on stages around the world were facing their own personal struggles. The music industry that had brought them fame and success also carried pressures that would eventually lead to heartbreaking loss. While Barry enjoyed family moments at home, dark clouds were quietly forming over the Gibb family story, and the coming years would bring challenges that would test his strength more than ever before. While Barry Gibb's home life with Linda and their children continued to grow stronger, another part of his life was slowly falling apart. For most of his life, Barry had never truly been alone in his musical journey. Since childhood, he had shared the stage, the studio, and the spotlight with his brothers. The Bee Gees were not just a band formed by musicians who happened to work well together. They were brothers who had grown up side by side, dreaming about music long before fame ever arrived. Their voices blended in a way that felt natural because they had been singing together since they were young boys. Because of this deep connection, the Bee Gees were more than a successful group. They were a family bond expressed through music. That bond made their success feel special, but also meant that the losses Barry would later face were deeply personal and painful. The first major tragedy came with the death of Barry's younger brother Andy Gibb in 1988. Andy had followed in the footsteps of his older brothers and quickly became a successful pop star in his own right. With hits like I Just Want to Be Your Everything and Shadow Dancing, Andy rose to fame during the late 1970s and became one of the most popular young singers of the time. Barry had even helped write some of Andy's biggest songs, and he cared deeply about his younger brother's success. However, fame can sometimes bring pressures that are difficult to handle, especially for someone so young. Andy struggled with the intense lifestyle of celebrity, and over time he became involved with alcohol and drugs. Those struggles eventually took a heavy toll on his health. When Andy died at the age of just 30, the loss shocked the entire Gibb family. For Barry, it felt like watching someone he loved slowly slip away. Even though the Bee Gees continued performing and creating music after Andy's death, the pain of losing a brother never truly disappeared. Years later, another tragedy struck the family when Maurice Gibb passed away in 2003. Maurice had always been an essential part of the Bee Gees' unique sound. His voice, musical skill, and sense of humor helped hold the group together during both their best and most difficult moments. For Barry, Maurice was not just a bandmate, but a lifelong companion who had shared every step of the musical journey. From childhood performances to worldwide fame, they had experienced everything together. When Maurice died suddenly after complications from a medical condition, Barry felt a deep emptiness that was difficult to describe. The Bee Gees had always been three brothers standing together on stage, and suddenly that balance was broken. Although Barry and his remaining brother Robin Gibb continued performing together for a time, life had already begun to feel different. The absence of Maurice left a space that could never truly be filled. Then in 2012, the final and perhaps most heartbreaking loss arrived when Robin passed away after a long battle with illness. Robin's voice had been one of the most recognizable sounds in pop music, and his emotional singing had touched millions of listeners around the world. For Barry, losing Robin meant losing the last brother who had shared the entire Bee Gees' journey from the very beginning. After Robin's death, Barry found himself in a situation he had never imagined. For the first time in his life, he was the only surviving Gibb brother. The music they had created together remained famous and beloved, but performing those songs without the voices of his brothers felt painful. Barry later admitted in interviews that he struggled deeply during this period. Music, which had once been a source of joy and connection, suddenly felt like a reminder of everything he had lost. Some days he wandered through his home, unsure of what to do next. The stages that once felt exciting now seemed empty, and the recording studios where the brothers had spent so many hours felt filled with memories. It was during this dark time that Barry began to question whether he wanted to continue making music at all. The Bee Gees had always been a shared dream among the brothers, and without them he wondered if the dream had reached its end. Grief can sometimes cause people to withdraw from the world around them, and Barry slowly began to drift into a quiet and uncertain place. Yet even as he struggled with these emotions, one person continued watching over him carefully. Linda had been beside Barry through every stage of his life, from the early days of fame to the height of global success.